Hello again. On this week's episode, there's a little bit of work done on the Harley front fender as well as the steering pin for the old grader, but the majority of the episode deals with fixing that no longer available gear for that rear tine tiller. Hope you enjoy it. If some of you were wondering why I didn't work on the grader last week, it's because I misplaced the steering pin. I have since found it and I'm ready to get busy to start getting this thing made. We are going to make this out of one piece. Someone had welded onto the end of this before. I don't really care for that, so I'm going to remake the entire piece. And what I'm going to make it out of is an axle shaft. Very few things that are going to be stronger that'll work for us here than this axle shaft. So we're going to cut one end off of it. We're going to measure our length, get the full length of this cut off, and so that we have our full piece, and then I can get busy machining the diameter to match what we have, and then we can drill our holes and get this thing back on the grader. We have the axle and the chop saw now, so let's cut the one end off. I've got the old shaft measured out, including the piece that's already broken off, to about 8.5 inches. So I've already got it set up in a chop saw for 8.5 inches. So let's cut this off, and we can start the machining process. Got the axle shaft cut off to the length I need, and then we can get busy next week getting this all machined down. What we're going to be doing, not only going to be taking the diameter of it down so that it's the same diameter as this pin, but I'm also going to be machining these flats here on both ends of it for the U-joint that goes over it, and then drill it for the bolt holes so we can get this thing all put back together and make that steering function as it did when it was new. All the holes are welded on the front fender for the Electroglide now, so I just need a little bit of a skim coat on the sides and definitely on the front because that's recessed to there where that light was. So I'm going to hammer that out just a little bit, fill that, get it all blocked out with 80, and then we should be ready to prime it, get ready to paint this thing. Got our first skim coat of body filler on the fender, so we're going to go ahead and take it down with 80 grit and our palm sander. Got it sanded down now. There's a couple of little low spots that we're going to have to take care of, but we'll put a second coat on those, get those sanded down, then it should just be about ready for primer. Fender's all sanded down and wiped down clean, ready to put some primer on it. I knew that coating it with primer wasn't going to be the finish for it. I can already see one dent in it, and there's going to be a couple of places we're going to need to touch up. But getting it all one color is very helpful. So having it all gray now, we'll put a couple more coats on it, and then we'll be ready to 220 block sand it, and that's going to find that dent for us, and it's also going to find any other imperfections that there might be before we're ready to spray the blue. As I mentioned earlier with the fender, repairing this, I wanted to get rid of the mud flap, and in doing so, the holes that are here, I can't fix those like I did with some of the other ones because it's just too much rust there. So I've got a piece of tape here to mark my line. I'm going to take a cut-off tool, and I'm going to cut that little bit of the fender off. Not really going to affect a whole lot, and it's going to look fine. Again, like I said, I'm using the tape as my line. I'm not going to cut it all the way to the end here because otherwise that piece will just keep flapping. So I'm going to cut my way around, and then I'll cut off both ends once I'm done. Alright, it's cut off. We'll go ahead and take the tape off of it now. You can see we got a nice clean line. I'm just going to take a grinder and kind of feather that a little bit, clean it up. Then I'll be ready to block sand it, check it for dents, and get ready to paint it. I'm going to get started on this gear that we talked about last week. First thing I'm going to do is get the sides cleaned up. There's some burrs right here, there's one there and another one down below that I need to get cleaned up first. Otherwise the chain isn't even going to go over the teeth. So I'm going to get the sides cleaned up first, and then we'll start focusing on what we want to do as far as which teeth need to be repaired and what we're going to do to make it right. The sides are all ground down, so I'm ready to get started on the teeth. You can see the area here between my finger and my thumb, it's fitting into the teeth pretty well. But as I go around, you can see it's sitting up high there. So that means the teeth are bent over so much that it won't allow the chain to slip down into it. So those are teeth that are definitely going to have to get taken care of. Now, since there's not a lot of torque on this thing, the only time it's utilized is when you're actually moving the machine from one place to another. When you're actually tilling, you put the machine in neutral, and then the tines will pull the machine along. So that's why the chain is so small. Our next step in repairing this gear is to put the chain on it and then start walking it around. And each time that we see that a link is not fitting down into the groove between the teeth, then that's where we know we need to do a little bit of grinding. So my next step is to get it so that the chain fits all the way around in all of them. And we're still not done at that point, but at least we know that the chain will fit into the gear for the entire 360 degrees. So as you see here, I'm pretty good right through there. I've already ground a couple of them, but right there it's a little high, and these aren't going to go down clearly because if these can't go in, the rest of it can't either. It's making the chain like it's too long for the gear. So once I see exactly which ones are giving us the problem, and I'll hold that up about 12 o'clock so I don't lose it. Got to pull the chain out of the way. We're going to take our grinder and we're going to just kind of go in just a little bit around those teeth to help the roller fit into it. I'm really not taking off a lot of material here. I'm just trying to clean it up a little bit. Just so that the chain will fit into those grooves. Alright, you can see now it's a lot longer span than it was. So right about here is where it starts, and I'm good all the way to this point now. It's almost further than the reach of my hand, and all I had to do was hit 2 or 3 teeth right along through here. So we're going to keep doing that. Now, file would be safer if you're doing this, but really good control of the grinder, making sure you're not taking off too much material. We don't want to weld onto this gear any more than we have to. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing, hit a couple more teeth here, and then keep going until the chain fits all the way around the entire, again, the 360 degrees. A lot of the chain through here is looking really good. And we come on around, and there's another one here I haven't fixed yet. I want to show you something. As we come around, the links are fitting in like they're supposed to, and then right there is where it doesn't go in. So what we're going to do, and you can even see it right there, that one where my finger is, you can see how bad that is. It almost looks like somebody's already welded something there, but that's just from being worn out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that, and that should allow the chain to fit in the rest of the way. And it might be the last one, I'm not sure. Let's see if we can get that one out of there. Alright, let's see what happens here. Get the chain back on it. And there we go. That's the one we fixed. It fits right in. But there's another one right here, right next to it. So that's basically what I'm doing, is I'm walking my way on around until I get to all of them. And with the rest of these, I'm right here between my fingers here and here. That's about all that needs to be repaired. So I'm going to finish these up, and then the chain will fit perfectly all the way around. And then we can do a better assessment of the teeth and see which ones we really need to fix. Now that I got those last few teeth ground, I'm going to roll this chain on around. You can see that every one of those links is fitting down between the teeth where it should. There actually looks like there's enough tooth at the top of each one that this may be good enough. But again, I'm going to do a better assessment of what's here because we don't want it to happen again. After taking a closer look at this gear with the chain, it seems to be doing okay, and given the environment that it's going to be in, it'll probably be fine. But I at least want to show you how to fix one of these teeth. If you'll see where my finger is, I'll put this rag behind it to give it some contrast so you can see it better. That one there is definitely in pretty bad shape, right where my thumb is. You can see it looks different than the rest of them. It's down a little bit. So I'm going to weld a little bit to that one and clean it up, and we're going to make that tooth look a little bit better than it is and more like the ones that are there. And I think this gear is going to be just fine. Upon closer inspection, there's actually two of them that are in pretty bad shape. So this one here and then two over this one, I'm going to go ahead and fix those. So the idea here is just to put a little bit of weld at the top of each one of these. You want to make sure the welder is turned up really hot. You want a good penetration on that gear and give us also enough that we can grind and file down to. So let's see if we can make this work. Alright, let's add a little bit more to the top of that one. Okay, I'm going to come down here and do the same thing to that one there. I'm going to clean these up now. The first thing I'm going to do is hit the sides, because if I do go to file it, that'll be a lot less that I'm going to have to file down. But I think I can get all of this with the grinder as long as I'm really careful. Takes care of the side on that side. Alright, there's both of the sides. Now, let's see if we can get the teeth themselves cleaned up. Need to do each side of the tooth. Looking pretty good, huh? It's looking a lot more like a tooth than that one, which we welded. So now we're going to do the same thing to that one, and then we'll check the fitment of the chain. See how the chain fits on those. And they fit very nicely. So now there's a lot more of the tooth. I can see both of them that I fixed, here and here. I know you can't see it from there, but there's a lot more of the tooth sticking through each one of the rollers now. So that's going to give it a lot more strength. So what I'm going to do is go through, I'm going to roll this thing around a couple of times. Try to pay really close attention to where I am. I think there's one right there actually that I'm going to need to fix. And then, actually there's one there that needs to be ground. Just a little bit. But then I think again, this thing can get put back into service. So here's my point of view. What I'm doing is I'm looking at each one of the teeth as they come into the window there between each one of the rollers. This one I was saying right there that I need to file a little bit, because you can see that it looks a little big actually in there and not as much of a point. The rest of these are looking pretty good. But again, I'm going to go around this thing several times and make sure that there's no other ones I need to dress. One thing that I'll tell you about fixing these things is that the more of them you fix, the more of them you see that are a little bit off. I just fixed a couple of more, and I'm about to fix this one here, and hopefully this will be the last one. But I want to do this thing in full time so you can see how quick this actually is. Once you're all set up, and you got everything you need at hand, it doesn't only take a few seconds to do this whole thing. There we go. Put the chain back on it, check it. The thing is working awesome. I think we're good now. The chain is fitting over the gear nice and tight. Spin it as fast as I can here. It's not binding. It's rolling across the gear very freely. So I'm pretty sure it's going to work just fine. Again, as we said last week, this gear and shaft assembly were not available anymore. So by repairing a few teeth and grinding and straightening out the ones that were damaged, we can put this thing back into service and it should last a very long time. Here's the repaired gear and new chain in place. And we have a couple of other components we need to take care of and check, and then we'll put the cover back on it and get this thing back together. Next time on Bulldog Builds, we should have that Harley fender painted and put back on the bike. We'll get the rear tine tiller back together and see if we can get it functioning. And we'll machine the pin for the steering on that old grader and see if we can get it back together. See you next week.